Rodger Blaker with Blaker Business Coaching.
Yes.
And you're going to continue with us on the starting a new business. And last week you talked about why we do what we do, and this week
I want to continue that theme, because last week I talked about Apple, and I gave you the example of why they're innovative and why they have a mass market like they do. So I want this week to go through some notes I've taken here. I've got a couple of examples that I think shows how mass markets can be reached, or how people can be successful. And again, it's about believing finding people that believe what you believe, and how you translate that into your own business, and how that can be maybe carried out to being a mass market. Because I think anybody that's in business, their ideal and dream would be to be in a mass market, not just be in a low market where you maybe have 5, 6, 7% of a market. So I want to cover a couple of examples here of the belief system, because remember the last week or two, what I've been talking about is not doing business because people have your product, they believe what you believe. So I want to give you a couple of examples and tell some stories. So I made some notes out of these things that I want to talk about. And two examples, one of them is the Wright brothers. Why were the Wright brothers successful at discovering a manned-powered flight when there was a lot of that activity going on in America, all over the world? That was the .com of the day. You had all kinds of people that had all kinds of funds. They had all kinds of experience. They had all kinds of technology people available to them. But yet the Wright brothers were the ones that discovered it. What about Martin Luther King? Led the human rights human rights change in America, when there was a lot of people that were suffering under civil rights, and also he was not necessarily the best orator in the world, although he was very qualified. But I want to give two examples of those two people and tell some stories around them. I think that will really make the point of that we all have that ability, but it goes back to really meeting people and having connection with people that believe what we believe. It's not about your product. It's not about your service. It starts with people believing and how you connect with them. Is that the why believe? That's the why again. It's a little more depth on that. I want to kind of go through some stories and give you an example, and also then show something about how you reach the market by building through a process. So why the Wright brothers? The notes I have here is that if you hire people to pay them money, they'll work for you. If you hire people that believe what you believe, they'll go through blood, sweat, and tears to be successful because of it. And back to Apple, we got these innovative products, but it isn't because Steve Jobs is the only person there. The people that work in that company believe what he believed, and I gave you that example last week. Same thing for the Wright brothers. They had a passion for this. They had a belief that if they were to figure out this flying machine, that could change the world.
So it wasn't just the profit, it was a passion.
It wasn't about the money for them. It was about the idea they had this passion. They had this driving force behind them. I want to give you a name here that I think most people probably have not heard, and this is an example that I want to use as the counterpoint for that. Have you ever heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? You ever heard that name?
No.
Okay, let me give you a little bit of history about this guy. And this is also going to be the example of the three things you oftentimes hear that business fail. And this is where I'm going to show you the counterpoint to this. You have a situation where they're undercapitalized, they have the wrong people, or bad market conditions. That's examples oftentimes given. Well, in the case of the flying machine and Pierpont Langley, that isn't true. This man here was capitalized by $50,000 by the War Department to discover flying machine. He was on a Harvard board, highly educated engineer. He had all the resources to be. He had all these smart people. These people had experience, and he had funds to be able to hire those people, pay them money to do this. He had the New York Times were following him around everywhere because he had created such a stir because he was going to discover the flying machine. So here's a place that they were capitalized, the market conditions correct or whatever, but yet he didn't discover it. He was discovered by these people in about 200 miles away in Dayton, Ohio, working on this. Now, the Wright brothers, for an example, they had high school educations. They had no college degree.
Wow.
Every person working for them, nobody had a college degree in their group that were helping them with this. They those people, though, believed that the Wright brothers believed.
They're like mechanics, They
were bicycle builders.
Yeah.
They would spend their evenings working on this plane, trying to figure out how to create a flying machine. One example of it is when they would go out to test this flying machine. This is over a long period of time. They took 5 parts for every part of the plane because they would therefore let the plane crash 5 times before they go in for supper.
Wow.
I mean, that's how driven these men were, because they had a dream about something here. It was an idea that they had a passion about.
Was that the thing when, you watch the old flying machines and the guys were driving the bicycle trying to take off? That might have been
they did create gliders. I don't know about the bicycle.
Yeah, okay, but
they created gliders and everything. So the difference of those guys were their belief. They believed this. They had people working for them that caught their passion, that believe what they believe. Same thing back to Apple. People working there believe what they believe. Therefore, they're people that believe in innovation. They go in there and they figure out ways to do things that come on the market and everybody goes, wow. But it's not about the money or fame. It's because they are driven to do what they do. Now, as a result, they get fame, they get money. But it's just like the Wright brothers. So the Wright brothers didn't have any of these things that Langley had.
But they didn't have somebody sitting around and going, they'll never get it off the ground. Where's my paycheck?
Well, Langley, Langley had these people that were doing it. Now, he wanted it for fame and money. That was his motivation. Fame and money, and the people working for him were working for paychecks.
Oh, that's such a good moral story, almost in a way.
So anyway, so you had the situation where that was his conditions. And on December 7th, 1903, Wright brothers had the first successful flight. Nobody was there. I remember that. We see those films. Those films were not the first time. They had already flown because no one was there. The New York Times was not following them around. So when the word got out, then they went and filmed these flights that you see on those video or the movies of that. But that was not their first day. Nobody was there when they did this, just a handful of people. But they were successful because they had a situation where people believed what they believed, and they went through blood, sweat, and tears to make this discovery. And then Langley, what happened to him the day that happened, the day he found out about it, he quit.
Is that like Langley Air Force Base?
No.
No.
So he quit. But he could have said, you know what, that was a great discovery. I'm going to take what you guys did, and I'm going to use the forces I have to make it a better, make it something better.
But he quit.
He just quit.
Because he was doing it for the fame and money. Okay.
Yeah, I did some research on him. He did help drive through an innovation of a more powerful engine. He did work on that, but he had his motives weren't there. He didn't have people captured with his idea that were working on it the same way. So there's one example. So it goes back here. I made a note here to make sure that people don't buy what you do. They buy they buy why you do it. And so it's back to the same thing. They buy because they believe what you believe. They believe in you and what you represent. So if you go out here and start talking about your product, how great it is, and what all the value it is, and what it does for you, and all that stuff like that, that isn't what motivates them to make connection with you first. It's belief. All right. Martin Luther King. Now I want to talk about this a little bit. Jimmy, the thing to do, let me make sure here. The law of diffusion of innovation. I want to show you something here of how this works too. This is a research done that shows how these things work. And what you have is 2.5% of the people are innovators. That's the very first one. And then Jimmy, the next slide, 13.5%.
And Jimmy's an innovator.
Well, I'm going to use, matter of fact, the reality
the really bad radio
as an example. I think is what's happening here. Then you have 13.5% of the population who are the early adapters.
Okay.
Then the next one, Jimmy, is the next 34% is the early majority. Then the next 34%, Jimmy, there you go, is the late majority. And then you have that little 16%. Of the laggards. Yeah, they're the people that buy the touch-tone phone when they no longer make rotaries. And I think Jimmy's program, I think it's a good example of this. And let me kind of explain how this works. How are we doing on time?
We're doing good.
Okay. What you have is that the early majority are the ones you're making. The early population of the adopters. They're the ones that make the connection, that believe what those innovators believe. They get the message. They connect with them, and they start being involved in that. Look at Apple again. You had those people standing in line for 8 hours or whatever it was to get an iPhone, to get the first iPhone, because those people that did that were people that were innovators. They believed the same thing Apple did. Or they paid $40,000 for a flat-screen TV. The technology wasn't that good. because those people had the same belief system that they're first. They're innovative.
That's why whenever they come out with something, there's a line around the...
Now, I bet if Jimmy and those guys research their program and how it's taken off, starting to get into population, they're making connections with people that have they're connected with the same things they're interested in, what they believe in. And what I think you're seeing him is a situation. Now, Jimmy, go ahead and go to the next slide, because I want to show you the market segments here. I think there should be one more.
Yeah, they're doing the show that they believe in.
Yeah, go their tipping point. Okay. What you have is you can get 10% of the marketplace pretty easily, but what happens here is that second bunch, those adapters, they start really creating a lot of buzz, a lot of spin. Those early majorities, they don't buy until they start hearing something or start hearing about it, and they start hearing a lot about it, they start a lot of information, and when they start hearing about it, that tipping point, and if you've ever heard the book Tipping Point, kind of ties to this, is that early adapters create such a stir, all the information's going on, those early majorities start hearing about it, probably at this program, the radio program they're doing at night, the word's getting out, because people are now texting, they're probably doing Facebook, there's all kinds of information where people are virally spreading information about this great show, cool show, and is over 2 million listeners now or something like that?
Approaching, yeah, we're about to get towards 2 million.
And so it'd be interesting to see if you guys keep going along the way you do, because 2 million's still not there. It could be all of a sudden you see this jump where it really takes off.
That's how you got your million, remember?
And that would be your tipping point. And so you'll see that bell curve. As long as you guys are producing something that's attracting that, and you're attracting a certain audience, and because your program consistently goes through this thing, they connect with you. They believe what you believe. They're interested in what you guys are saying. So you can promote it. You can tell them what they're going to get all day long. That's not the deal. It's what they're hearing. It's what they're connecting with. So it's a cool example of that.
That's what makes people that have lots of followers and hardly any friends on Twitter, because everybody follows them.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. Okay. All right, so much on that. Moving along here, and I want to give you an example of failure and success. How are we doing our time?
Well, you're so sweet. We're at 12.
Do every time?
Yeah, you got about 3 minutes.
Okay, try to wrap this up real quick of a failure and a success. Take TiVo. We use that word as a verb now. TiVo has never been successful as a company. I think I said that last week, but I did a little more research on it. And give you an example of what TiVo did for branding themselves and why they were a failure. They came out and they said they had this product, and this is all true. They really have an innovative product. They have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. Well, here's the response that majority gave back. We don't believe you. We don't need it. We don't like it. And you're scaring us. Because it was all this technology thing. Yeah. What happens if they had said it this way? If you're the kind of person who really likes to have total control of every aspect of your life, man, we got a product for you. It does all. Oh,
that is good. That is good.
And so it
was the communication.
That's it, because that belief, not the product, not what it does, it's that belief of it. So there's an example of a failure.
Yeah.
Example of a success. Summer of 1963, 250,000 people show up in Washington, D.C. to listen to Martin Luther King speak. And why is that? Why did that happen? He didn't have mass mailings. He didn't have the Internet. He didn't have anything to do that. But what did Martin Luther King go around the country doing over and over? I believe. I believe. I believe.